Hello. Hi, Anita. Hi, Kathy. Hello, David. Good to see you.
Hi, Bally.
How you doing, Kathy?
I'm well. I'm multitasking, so I'm gonna
It's so good to
and
have you
I'm off.
on.
Glad to be here, girl.
Oh, good to have you on. It's amazing. I, w- David, can you hear me? Hopefully you can hear me. All well. Greetings, greetings. We are going to kick off, so we're just a few seconds late starting. Let me see. We will have other people joining. I will pause just a moment there. Okay, good to see you. I saw it on the French channel. Yes, the humanoid marking the Chinese New Year, the year of the horse. So yeah, Happy New Year. So for those of you who celebrated, and as I said, I saw some amazing parades in the north of the country here in the UK. I was in Manchester and then of course in Liverpool. Um, I, I, um, I just want to say thank you everyone for being here on this Wednesday. I'm delivering the session today. I have got some questions. I have also got slides for you. I know I'm also mindful that some of you are driving. So if you're okay with that, I can go straight into my slides. If you've got specific questions, today is very much looking at some of the tools that you may have started using already. We've got a couple of announcements from new tools, and you're probably thinking, yes, a new tool. However, these are the same models that we've been using. We've got some upgrades. So I'm going to share a little bit about that today. And if you've got any specific questions, then I can also, I'm happy to address any questions that you may have. Otherwise, I can go straight into the slide deck if that's for most of you, it looks like if you're driving, or perhaps it's a little bit, I know it's very early for you, Anita. Tom, I can see you're perhaps getting back into the car. So we'll go straight in. I'll share my slides as I normally do. Hey, Sharita, good to see you on.
Hello, everyone. Peace and love.
Yeah, peace and love. Good to see you. So, do you, Sharita, we're gonna about to go start in, but if you've got any questions that you may have, we started actually with looking at we looked at a little clip, in fact, to mark the Chinese New Year. We saw humanoids dancing, and it's been one of the most watched gala robots. Well, actually, it's one that most of us will never haven't seen before. So it's a phenomenal display. I can share that in there because I know you've just joined. I'll put the link in. I'll copy that in and share it for you as well, Sharita, because this is how we started, just watching a little clip marking um, the New Year, the Chinese New Year. So, okay, would you like me to share straight into the slide deck? Would that be the best thing to do? Shall I do that? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Let's do that then. Welcome everyone. Today is February the 18th, and it's our Leaderized bi-weekly AI session. We're going to be looking at strategic decision support. The reason I've named it this is because of some of the things that we're going to be looking at today. So you're going to find that there's quite a lot of text in the slides. I will go through highlighting the key components and asking you to think about some of the tools that you may be using. I thought I'd lead in with a few questions. I know some of you are driving. Feel free to unmute and come in, or you can ask a question. If you have a question as normal, you can just pop it in the chat, or feel free to just simply unmute and share. So question one for all of us actually, and this applies to myself as we're stepping into applying AI tools more and looking at automation as well. So one of the questions as I was preparing for this was what's our current AI spend, or what's your current AI spend strategy? And do you know why you're choosing a particular model? That's something to be thinking about as we go through this session. So are you thinking about which model to use when you're going in. So anyone, feel free to unmute when you're thinking of a model. So it might be, so, are you thinking, well, I'll use GPT for this. It could be any of the models within the GPT environment. So it might be that you're looking at 5.2 or 5, or perhaps the legacy model. Are you thinking, well, I'm going to use Claude and I'm using, and you'll know that if you've been following the news or just looking at kind of the latest tweets or social media, you will have seen that we've also got the latest model from Claude. Does anybody know which one that is? So perhaps I will, of course, mention that in a few moments if you know. So when you're thinking of a model, any AI model, are you thinking about how much you're spending on those models, right? Question two, I know, as I said, some of you might be on the road. Um, so Sharita, do you have anything, do you think about this? Do you think about which model you're using on a day-to-day basis and how that sort of what informs that decision?
To be honest, I don't think about it. I just know I need something done and I go and try to figure out where to get it done at.
So so you go to the chat window and then just sort of ask it, is that what you're doing?
Yeah, because sometimes most of the time it's like really on the spot and I just need, okay, well, I need the answer to this and I'm so then.
Yeah, it's thank you for that, Sharita, and thank you for sharing. It is interesting that it's I always say I use the analogy of using, say, a microwave. We'll have a few settings that we go to, and we stick to those settings, and yet we may have like quite a few of those settings, and we go for the quickest thing, right? So we press like quick start, whatever it might be, and it might be the same in other environments. So this is hopefully we can start thinking a little bit about sort of which model we're using and for what. And that's basically what we're going to be talking about today a little bit. So what's our biggest blind spot? So people will say, wow, if I knew what my blind spot was, I'd tell you, but I don't. But the idea is it's kind of probing a little bit, asking in terms of is it speed, perhaps the thing you're not sure how quick the models are in responding. There's thing called latency, how quickly and slowly each model responds, and the decision of and how do we know it's the decision quality. So I'll say a little bit as we go through on that. And how do we know that? How can we know to trust the outputs, right? To trust it or
Hey, good
him.
morning.
Morning, David.
Yeah,
Did you want to come in?
yeah. 25 on those four, then ring these up separately for
Yeah.
25. I wanted to, and then pack it up.
Ah,
Yeah, all are separate.
hold on, David. I
Yeah,
think you're.
two separate.
This
Hold
also
on.
separate.
All 25.
Let me
Thank you.
unmute you because it looks like
When
you're.
debit transaction separate, sometimes decline. So go ahead, pause this.
Okay,
25.
1 second. Let me just stop and apologies, everyone. Just let me see if I can do it this end. Okay, so that should have done it. So it looks like you're on a call. Okay. Right. So the other question,
Bally,
yes.
if you're looking for a little feedback, I just stopped my car for a moment. I'm happy to talk about my
Yes, please. Yes, please.
spend, I guess,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say it's representative necessarily of anybody or anything, but I'm looking for new clients right now, so that I'm feeling the cost constraints, and then I've certainly heard all the benefits and how many people prefer Claude. I have been sticking with ChatGPT, to be honest with you, just because it's familiar with me. I'm comfortable with it. I realize that it's like overly effusive. Everything I do is fabulous, and it's like, okay, I'm not take that with a grain of salt. But I still do find it very useful. I go into very detailed prompts. I thought your session on prompting was really excellent. It's like we've moved into a new era in that as far as that goes. When I have put some proposals together, I've appreciated the opportunities for deep research. So, when I'm in a little better positioned, I see that as a really good investment, and people are impressed with that. The white papers and proposals that, instead of just describe my services with line items, assess what's happening in that field, relating to that specific project. And then what was the other thing? I look forward to getting into Gamma because, again, I'm doing a master class, not quite as high level as what you're doing right here, but again, an opportunity for people to ask questions about PR and books and stuff like that. And so I love the look of Gamma, but I've never used it yet. So that's kind of where I am. I just thought I would throw all of that in.
Thank you. It's yeah, that's super helpful. And and this is why when I sort of decided a couple of years ago and I started sort of speaking about AI, and this was going back in January, more than 2 years ago, in fact, what I sensed was there was a lot of models, and of course we have, and they've come a long, long way, as we know. And some of them we will have tried, and some of them we'll have, we've heard about, but perhaps not had an opportunity to try as of yet. So this platform, I felt that it would be helpful. So just to once in a while look at the tools and the things that work and what are the updates, and how can we then decide on which model to use. And so by default, so I think, Sharita, what you just said, by default, some of the models, the latest ones do appear. Not always, but they tend to appear. And I'm going to look at and say a little bit more about Claude today. So thank you for that, Tom. And so yes, we have different tools doing different things. We've got ones that are specifically, and we'll talk a little bit about this. So when we're thinking of research, Tom mentioned research. Tom, I'm sure you're also using Perplexity. And if you're not, certainly would highly recommend that we use Perplexity, a one for research. Gamma and other tools we can are very good at creating slides. Now, some models where we'll see this, where you can create slides. If you've ever tried that in Claude, if anyone's here and tried that, they're not to the level that you'd want or expect. Yes, you're able to create slides, but some of the information may get left out, and then you may need to take it into another tool to amend. So some of them are really good at the thing at hand, like reasoning we'll talk about with Claude, or how GPT differs. And I'll talk more about the three top. Well, there are many tools that are here, but in terms of the large language models that we'll talk about today, and there'll be others. So, feel free to share which ones you're using. And
Oh,
so,
actually, Bally, can I throw
yeah,
one more thing in real quick?
yeah,
I forgot to mention this. As you know, I've been posting a video on LinkedIn and Facebook every day, kind of motivational and a little aspect of the work that I do and stuff like that. And so that's certainly falls in the category of repetitive tasks, the need for a text intro, hashtags, et cetera. So it's like every day kind of repetitive. So I'm excited about, kind of the agentic side of things, but I have not yet stepped into that. So that's also something I'm eager to learn about.
fantastic. Yes, absolutely. And what we'll do today, yeah, we'll go through some of those questions as we go through the session. So looking at, so one of the other questions, are we architecting for human AI collaboration? So, or AI to AI orchestration, and which gap is a bigger risk, right? So things to bear in mind as we go through today's session. So what you will have seen, so I've put a little bit of pricing on this as well, and this is based on some of the research. So you will have seen the latest announcements, and if, like me, you will have been using Opus 4.5 and Opus 4.6, really blew our mind in terms of its reasoning capabilities. And so what we're going to be, and yesterday, Claude announced their Sonnet 4.6, which in terms of, when we look at SWE, we're thinking of software engineering benchmark. That's kind of the benchmark that's provided in the research. And so what we're going to be, and that actually, Sharita, by default, it will go to Sonnet. And sometimes it's quite confusing. I don't know, like I certainly found it confusing. I'm like, okay, we've got Sonnet, we go to Claude, we've got different models, and it's the same with GPT. You go to the different models and then suddenly you see, well, I can use Sonnet or I can use Opus 4.6. A colleague actually in our AI Mastermind group, what he was doing, he was actually using the more expensive model, which was Opus, and wondering why that he'd actually maxed out his kind of, credit on that on in that month because suddenly it would stop midway. So even though we think actually I'm not going to hit that threshold, it does hit that threshold if we're not careful and we're using a more expensive model. So we can actually go to as high as 25 dollars per million tokens, and that's a lot of tokens, of course. And tokens, if you remember, is it could be a piece of a bit of short text or a word. So it might be just a few words, if you like, and that's how it's measured, right? Or that's how we'll see it telling us we have 1 million tokens, right? So this is just some terminology that we're seeing when we're using these models. So if we're thinking about the latest model, which is really exciting because if we've got a faster and a cheaper model from Claude, which is 4.6, which came out yesterday. So that's the kind of big kind of discussion at the moment. That means that we can do the task that Tom just mentioned about the repetitive tasks, the things that we can do regularly that won't one sort of cost that much when we're looking at automation, but we don't need necessarily the deep reasoning the models like 4.6 require. So things like, email, like things that, surface level stuff that maybe don't require that kind of more, reasoning that you may need for deeper thinking, you would want to go to Sonnet. So those are some of the ways that we can, think about these models when we go into Claude, if that is one of the ones. And I would say, for everyone here, do experiment with the tools, and we'll talk through this a little bit today. And even if it means that you're using the free, the tier, which is, that's not going to cost, just to kind of get used to those models and just seeing how they differ. So that was something I wanted to mention. The strategic implication is performance that would have previously required reaching for an Opus class model. That's what the claim has been made now. Previously, we go to the Opus class because it's seen as more, kind of superior, if you like. And now, including on real world economical value, we're seeing the same with Sonnet 4.6, which is exciting. It means that we're getting the same for less money. It's always what we want, right? As business owners, if you think about it, because especially if we're looking at automating and thinking, actually, I know I can put this into my costing, if you like, and then move in that direction. I think somebody's put a question. If I missed a question, please stop me if I missed anyone's question. Did I find? So the developers are now shifting. Of course, a lot of it would be repetitive tasks. So they're going for the latest, which is the 4.6 Opus over 4.5, which means that they've 59% of the time in head-to-head coding evaluations. That is the latest research which I was looking into. So Sonnet 4.6, of course, being the latest over zero point 0.5. And this is now, interestingly, has become the default model for free and pro users, which is exciting. It means that if you haven't started paying, you are going to be blown away with what's possible. So even with the free, that's why I put in the economic reality, the tier collapses here. So we're seeing that actually we're able to use or even familiarize ourselves with these models without thinking, I need to kind of, sign up for a pro account. But, before you decide to go for pro enterprise, if that's the right direction. Some of you may already have an enterprise account. I don't think Richard's here today, but perhaps he has pro users. So, okay, so for pro users, we haven't talked about Claude Cowork. Um, Definitely I recommend giving that a go. If you haven't, I can show you later on if that's something of interest. And skills we spoke about a few weeks back. And I've started creating skills. And I would like to do another session on skills because it could be something that we can add and share skills. It might be an exciting project for those interested in creating skills. So I'll just say a little bit about that. So just to kind of a recap just if you remember, we've done sessions on creating GPTs, right? So in the GPT environment, you can create bespoke GPTs. In Gemini, if any of you go into the Gemini environment, they call them gems, right? So we can create gems. And in the Claude environment, so just so that we're becoming familiar with these different models, they have skills. So skills are what we spoke about a few weeks ago. And what I find really exciting about skills, it means the things that I'm repeating, doing repetitively, I can add as a skill, and I can then invoke that and use that in the Claude environment. And it actually, sometimes it realizes the skill, but there's a little bit of planning needed when you're thinking of a skill. I'll just give you a bit of insight what I've done in terms of skills. I've created one on assessments. So I've put one together that actually allows me to assess. So it's a kind of a skill for assessments. It's got the criteria embedded in there. That was one. The other one is for article writing. So I created a skill for writing articles, which is doing really well. I mean, in terms of the skill, it follows a structure and then it writes the article. And those are just two examples of the skills that I've created thus so far, and others as well that I'm building in. And as I stack these skills, I'll be able to use those. I've done that also with GPTs. I've created GPTs and also in Gemini, not so much, but the same principles in the Gemini environment. So if I go to the Gemini environment, I can show you what that looks like. Um, so if I go in and so I'll show you how that looks because we've looked at Claude, we've looked at GPT environment, and so they look a little bit like this. They're called gems. And then when you look at gems in that way, again, you can share them. And you can see that there are only two in there. Haven't utilized it as much as I have with GPTs, created so many GPTs. And now I'm also like I said, I've been looking at skills. So I just wanted to kind of highlight the things that we're able to do with the three kind of top models that most of us have spoken about before. Ivan, hi there. How you doing?
Hello. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
Good to see you. Good to see you. So I don't know if I can sort of just recap. We're talking about just a bit of a recap on what's been happening with the launch of Sonnet 4.6 you may have heard about, which came out yesterday. Really much cheaper than say, the Opus. So when we're thinking of those two models in the Claude environment, the two Opus being the one for the deep reasoning. So I want to do sort of, deep reasoning and, beyond surface level repetitive stuff. We go to that, but cost a little bit more. Whereas if we go to Opus 4.6, which is phenomenal, if you've been using that, it really, like from coding to debugging and all the other things that's possible than it would be 4.6. So by default now it's taking us to the cheaper model, which I like that that's the thing that's happening. So if we're using going and having Coworker, if you've used Coworker in the Claude environment, then by default, I saw that pop up today. So that's exciting. It means we'll be able to keep our costs down without having to have the more expensive enterprise package. Are you using Claude yourself?
Awesome. Thank you.
Using Claude?
I use it a little bit. I'm kind of stuck more in the ChatGPT space at the moment and Perplexity.
Okay. So the research part, research as opposed to going in, well, research and GPT. And you're going to see a little bit
Yeah,
now, hopefully, from what we're going to be talking about in this.
cool.
So yeah, in terms of enterprise AI spend strategy, the new procurement. This is research came out last year. So when we're thinking about our spend strategy, and most of us are going to be thinking about that once we start, applying these tools, perhaps like Tom was mentioning about having tools that we get sort of get agentic in this space. We're going to be thinking, well, how much am I spending? So some research last year came from Harrods in 25. It spoke about the shift to traditional software rigor. So, when we're thinking of checklist and price sensitivity, we would do this procurement check. And so, of course, we're all kind of perhaps experimenting. We're noticing that we may max out. We're also going to be thinking about security and also thinking about use case scenarios. So when we're thinking of any model, which, thinking of Perplexity for research, think of what the use case scenario is and which model is going to suit that case. That's going to be the thinking behind what we're doing today. It's like, okay, I want this doing, and so which model will help me do that? And so rather than just going into one, um, you'll be able to use different models. And most of us here have been, I believe, they've been using more. Perhaps we've leaned a little bit more towards one just because it's the go-to, less friction. We are creatures of habit, most of us, I say that, or, having less friction. So we go to the thing that we know we've created GPT, so we stick to that. And I'd encourage people to look at Anthropics, look at what's possible there, and test out the some of the features. Um, so so we're looking at the latest. So want direct access to the latest models that best performance as soon as it's available. People do that not because it's this thing of, oh well, it's the shiny object syndrome thing. Well, actually the latest ones do perform well. So we know that they're going to be in this environment, most of them, if we're staying in the OpenAI environment, or we're looking Anthropic. We know that these models will get better, and hence we're beginning to lean in that direction, most of us, I believe. So the three sort of the lens, the evaluation framework, so ease of implementation, integration with existing perhaps platforms. We're thinking about how do we integrate if we're looking at any app, anything, how does it integrate with what we've currently got? Have we got authentication, firewalls? Those are some of the things that we look for. And this is where the research is saying total cost of ownership, subscription fees. We've got API usage, customization, scaling costs, etc. Security compliance. We spoke about this before. And also ensuring that the regulations are actually then they're adhering to the practices of where we're based, right? And also beyond. So when we start comparing a little bit, and please stop me if you've got questions. So the complex, I'm going to go through these a little bit just to give us a sense of the different models, because it gets, unless we see, if I'm a visual learner myself, and I like to hear through and work through which are the models and what it's going to inform my decision. I like to just see them either side by side, or just see, okay, which model, what am I going to use? So think about the more complex coding, deep reasoning I just mentioned, and the go-to would be the Claude Opus 4.6. So that would be the deep read. Now that one is going to cost a little bit more, which we mentioned. We also have the GPQA, which is the graduate professional question answer diamond, which means that the benchmark is high for SWE, software engineers benchmark. So that's great because it does the research as well. A little bit more on the cost, and that's million tokens. So for per million tokens. And then when we think about the kind of more cost efficient, high volume, very quick and efficient, then we'd kind of lean towards the Sonnet, the latest one, the 4.6, which we're seeing tends to be, this is based on the latest research, which is still very high. Seems like the developers have gone really into this, preferring this over Opus now because of the efficiency and also the cost reduction, right? So they can, if we're handing work off to someone, they're going to most likely they'll be using this now if you hand work off, or you're doing yourself. So that will help them reduce their cost there. Multimodal, as we know, a lot of the tools have, like GPT or the OpenAI, it's OpenAI, which is in the GPT environment. We do have multimodal means, we've got video generation, right? Or, if we've got imaging, right? The one to go for is Gemini Pro 2.5 Pro. Some of you may already be using Gemini. Gemini I just had up on there. I have, I'm working on all three, and I have got all pro versions of them. So sometimes I also like to check what you're getting if you're just testing these out. So sometimes I might say, okay, what are you, getting? Does it, is it performing? And then you come back to it the next day if you haven't started paying. And it seems to be cheaper, right? In terms of 12 it's $12 dollars per million tokens. And then 2000K, which is incredible. Speed. Now the thing to bear in mind, whereas GPT, when we think of 5.2, it's quick, but it's more flexible. Because of its speed, it may, because of that, there may be tendency for it to give us outputs which we question, or we think, oh, it's given me its speed over quality sometimes. That's what I'm alluding towards, right? So it's quick, but is it giving you what we're looking for there? So regulation, we've seen now with enterprise guardrails built into Claude. And so we've got improved guardrails within the Claude environment. So this is something to bear in mind. And also both now have started going into the health, certainly the healthcare. I know OpenAI has also announced that. You can see now the rival of getting into these spaces with finance and healthcare, and Google Workspace, which is the other one, which is the business plan. This isn't the one I'm on. Somebody here may be on the business plan. So the thing with the Google Space, it integrates with existing space if you're using that. However, you can still do that, for example, with Claude. Like say, if I'm using Cowork and I'm accessing my documents through my Google Drive, it can do that. So it can do the work behind the scenes and access those documents. So that's something to be thinking about. So let me just stop before I look at the case study, see if people have got any questions coming along. Okay, so Kathy's saying currently using GPT 5.2 to haven't really considered the cost, just pay the monthly fee. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Sometimes if it's doing what you want it to do and you're using it to write, and it's the go-to. If we're thinking of automation, or we're thinking, how can I, especially in Claude, I was using the example of a peer in the AI Mastermind who exhausted his, you know, sort of credit, if you like, maxed out because he was using Opus, which is more expensive, and then wanted to lean back to the GPT environment as a result of that, saying, actually, it's not performing, but it was performing, but it was just using a more expensive model. That was the issue rather than the environment he was in. So that tends to happen as well. But now he's back in that space and loving it. So it's a little bit like, so it's good to hear. And I actually am with you, Kathy. I do go to the GPT environment for a lot of the questions, but I'm also mindful that I want to ensure that, there's none of that. It's not kind of giving me the out, like Tom was saying, saying, what was the expression you used, Tom? That, hey, I'm great. Like, okay, sort of, you know, I don't know which, I think Tom might be driving, so I'm not going to stop you. Okay, you might be on the road. So you may find that unless you've, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Bally. I'm not sure what you were referring to.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. So I was referring to the GPT kind of staying in that environment where it complements us as opposed to.
All right. Yeah, exactly. It's like what an amazing idea, and then I say no. I changed my mind. I think I want to do it this way. It's that brilliant. You're totally right. It's like okay. So I just kind of let that. I guess maybe I said I take it with a grain of salt. I don't think I'm the most fabulous AI genius in the world, but it's in the. And then also I notice, and maybe they all do this, but it's like when I've achieved what I'm looking for, it says, "Can I do these other six things for you?" And like, I don't really have time for that. So I see some pitfalls in ChatGPT. So just on the basis of what you've been telling us, even today, I'm excited to try Claude and a few other things like that. In the free models, I don't know why I just assume there must be a cost to everything because I guess that's not really the case. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bally,
Yes. 100%. This is the thing. We often think if I go to another model, it's going to cost. The cost will be the time maybe testing it out. That's it. But once you get comfortable with it, you'll find that it will shift your thinking and also challenge us in thinking, especially automation. We might have different models. I've always said that. I don't think one of them is going to solve the problem because I just don't feel that's going to work for me personally. So there are also other things you could say when you're prompting your GPT. So, ask it, to be blunt, ask it to be, and some of you, I'm sure, have already started trying that, unfettered, like, I do not want any, give me, be as honest. So you've got to really challenge it and think of sort of terms that so time is the biggest cost. I call these school fees. No, it's absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It is.
Bally,
Yeah, Kathy.
Bally, Kathy, I did put in some of those parameters you guys had suggested kind of early on. Like, please be brutally honest with me, challenge me. Um, I can't remember exactly what they were, but I put in several of those and I noticed an immediate change. Now, when I'll ask something, it'll say, no, that's not the way, you should go about that because, XYZ. So thank you for that early on.
Yeah, it's so good, right? Because if the other one you might also um try is this here. So I'm just gonna put it in there. Um so you might give it this and just say I can give you some of the prompts as well, but just unfettered. No constraints, just unfettered. Just give me as it is. And look at second order consequences tends to work, tends to be a good kind of way of asking it to give you, and then go deeper into this analysis if you're using the GPT environment. So try giving it those types of words. Absolute GPT. Yeah, it does absolutely. It does. It's syncophatic in the sense that it kind of is agreeable. It mirrors us. So thanks for that, Anita. Unless we kind of go into our GPT and then go into that space. That is one way around it. If we're, wanting to, rather than it just agreeing with us. I'm noticing that I spend some time actually, when you're around how young people looking at how young people are using these tools, and some of you may also have experience. They are going to one or two tools and asking it quite personal questions, and then leaning on that for advice. So that's what I'm noticing at the moment. So I don't know if you've noticed that. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing. So, now that, so I'm kind of going and mentioning this to people as I've noticed this, just observed this myself. So there's one, so come back to kind of for us in terms of saving to decision to velocity, the strategic shift, the old metric efficiency, doing the same work faster. As we're pedaling faster, we're doing. So this is a case study, actually one taken from Claude. They used this company Lindy, and I started looking at who these guys were. They've got a team of 25 individuals, and they've achieved, according to their research, 10 times faster. So when I was asking, also doing other research, they're saying maybe it wasn't quite 10, maybe it was 8, but phenomenal what they've actually managed to achieve, and their growth has been phenomenal year after year. And so they've got something like 500 apps supporting businesses in automation without humans in the loop. That's the kind of multi-agent orchestration. The ROI they're saying is 20 to 35% cost reduction per workflow, improvement in time to resolution, and accuracy target on routine tasks. And so they're focusing not only on sort of large enterprise, but small, medium businesses, on sales, marketing. And so we also can do this. We don't have to lean on those type of templates if we don't want to, but we know these companies are they've niched down and supporting businesses in this space. So the trusted architecture, moving from tool to partner. And this is how I'm starting to see, and we're seeing this, observing this, rather than it being a tool, it becomes our working partner. I don't know if you've all noticed that it's becoming the partner we go to when we're using these tools. So what makes AI a trusted partner versus just a tool? So how can we trust the outputs that it's actually giving us? So when we think of reasoning, continuity over extended sessions, now we notice that if we go to the models where they have long context retrieval scores, like they've got its score versus 18.5% for Opus, which means that that's quite huge in the sense that they're able to hold that long window without losing its memory. In other words, it's still able to retain the conversation. You know how it starts diluting the message, and you see the beginning and the middle bit gets a bit kind of fuzzy or a bit vague. The model actually uses context ingests rather than losing track. So rather than getting lost in the middle. So it seems to be doing quite well. So for those deep reasoning types of work that we may be looking at, the strategic decisions, or whatever that task might be for us. So we need to be thinking about that rather than thinking just about the cost component, thinking, well, is it losing its, is it still managing the actual conversation in the context, in that sort of large context, or is it diluted the message, or so, and those are things to think about. Autonomous operation capability. So we think of Sonnet and 4.6 now can build complete applications from scratch, including standing up database services, purchasing domain names, configuring DNS, which is domain name server settings, and performing. This is secure. This is more about security, which is the security settings that we have. It's a service operation control, I believe, security audits with minimal human intervention. So when we're thinking of parallel AI labor agent teams, so we're looking at Claude introduces sub-agents, specialized AI assistants that work in parallel with their own context window. That's something to remember. It's working in its context window with its parameters, and so it's working sort of together. Now, when we can create this ourselves, of course, and we would have sub agents doing that rather than kind of a because they assigned to do, we wouldn't ask an intern to do everything. Some people may, but we know that that one, we need to ensure that they're capable of doing that. So it's the same with having agents specific to the actual task at hand. So research, which Tom mentioned at the beginning, multi-agents in parallel as a team and coordinate, they coordinate, and with shared task list with self-coordination. So in other words, they're working towards moving in the right direction as you would if you had a team of personnel. So safety first. Claude's constitutional AI, you may have seen or read about the constitutional AI. You can read it on their site. Approach means it may refuse dubious requests, stick to facts it can support. So it may actually, I'm noticing that OpenAI is doing that a little bit more as well because of the backlash, because of that we've seen cases of, health concerns. It will now kind of, refuse those, the outputs and direct you to, check with your GPT. If you've noticed that, check with your GPT, beg your pardon, check with your GP. Claude might give the safest answers, GPT the most well-rounded and context-rich answers. So remember that context-rich answers. In other words, if you're asking that thing, it will give you that context-rich answer. So it might kind of give you that just to kind of make you feel good. Human AI collaboration versus AI to AI orchestration. So where we are now, human AI collaboration, single AI systems augmenting individual tasks, human in the loop for critical decisions. So, and model selection based on single task performance. So if we're thinking about how we're going to be working in this direction, I would say we are now heading to AI orchestration. When we see this, if you're like me, we're all feeling a little bit still uncomfortable thinking the AI orchestration, and we're seeing this happening more and more. It's Kellogg's, I believe they've done this. They've automated a lot of what they're doing at the moment. I think all of it's kind of robotic at the moment. So multiple specialized agents coordinating autonomously, human oversight at the workflow level, not task level. That's interesting, at the workflow level, but not the actual task level. So 84% of leaders cite skills gap as the primary barrier to multi-agent orchestration. And that tends to be the case that we're seeing that. And not surprising, to tell you the truth. So insufficient state management, in other words, the state management is because it can't perform the task. So we're still seeing that it's failing to perform. Perhaps there's the disconnect. Perhaps there's been an issue in the kind of response. So we're still seeing those failures. Poor agent handoff. So it can't hand off something because there's an issue. We'll start seeing a little bit sort of as we start building this ourselves. Start simple. The key thing is to start simple, test thoroughly and scale gradually. I think that would be the message. And perform one, test it, and then build on it. Unless you're giving it to someone, you've got that budget, of course. Security protocols, we're looking at security, looking at transport, layer security between agents, complete audit trails. And this is, of course, something that Richard spoke about, where we're expected to have those audit trails with the granular permissions as they pass through. Skills needed. distributed systems, design. A lot of it, of course, we've already got with the models that can help us with a lot of this, you know, fixing issues, coding. Do we need to know this? Not necessarily we can, because the AI will help us. If we're ever stuck, we know that the AI is there to support us if it can be trusted, right? To do the thing. So our blind spots or your blind spot assessment, speed, trust, or decision quality. If speed is your blind spot symptom, you're paying premium for Opus when Sonnet 4.6 achieves 99% of what it is you want, and performance at 5 times less at the lower cost. Action audit, current usage. Look at what you're using. And perhaps you're not using it enough at the moment and saying, actually, it's for what I'm using it, it's doing it. But if you're thinking of, and most of us will be going into the automating, then we're going to be thinking about how can we, if we're getting a lot of I know, Tom, you're doing a lot more writing, a lot of repetitive things that you're getting out daily, putting stuff out, then you're going to be looking at these metrics. Time to resolution, improvement target. We're going to see improvement from 30 to 50%. If trust is your blind spot, so we're looking at hallucinations, unchecked, not verifying workflows, action, implement long context, retrieval scoring, use Claude for high stakes decisions. So look at Claude, yeah, because it gives you the graduate professional quality question answer. And that's where these are the benchmark from software engineers, metric hallucination rates, reduction reasoning, continuity scoring. So look at that as a way of saying, okay, if that's the case, why don't I just test it out in that environment for myself? Because I know I'm going to get, that level of response. If decision quality is your blind spot, symptom fast outputs but poor strategic outcomes, AI used for execution, not insight. So action deploy, use Opus 4.6 for complex reasoning. If you're looking at complex reasoning, coding, implement agent teams for multi-perspective analysis. Consider using 4.6 metric decision to action latency. So in other words, you'll get it's not slow. I can't say it's slow, but you don't want to have quick responses with some models, but compromises the output. So if it's ambiguous, then it doesn't make sense. So your action plan for I'll share these with you and you can give this a go. Action framework, next 30, 60, 90 days. Audit, current AI spend, map, which models you're using and why. So which model are you using and why am I using that? I'd ask that question. 80% of tasks, can we migrate those to the cheaper 4.6? Tiered reasoning, protocol sonnet, speed, Opus for complex reasoning, Gemini for multimodal. Although we can use some of the multimodal also if we're looking at images in OpenAI. If we're creating videos, you may want to look at Gemini. Pilot skills creation, document 5 repetitive workflows. So Tom, I know you mentioned that. What are the 5 things? Convert those to Claude skills for using natural language. Those could be worth doing. Definitely worth doing. If you're interested, please do reach out. We can work on creating skills. They are does take a little bit of time setting up. Reskill for orchestration. I beg your pardon, I've gone to strategic, 30 to 90 days, architect for agent teams, design workflows, assume parallel AI coordination, implement trust metrics, move beyond accuracy to reasoning, continuity and long context retrieval, hybrid model, evaluate combining Claude stability with Gemini multimodal and GPT flexibility. So that might be the way forward. And transformation, of course, 90 days reskill would be the way. Invest in distributed systems, design observability process. Measured decide velocity, replace time saved with decision to action latency as primary KPI for decision making. I think I had a question in there because I know I've gone on time. Okay. You're welcome, David. I just want to say those are some of the points. So the key takeaways, I know I've gone over time. When we started today, we were playing um, we played the humanoid celebrations for the Chinese New Year. I'll share the recording with you, Ivan, the little clip that we saw if you haven't seen it. So just a quick takeaway, I'll just be a few more seconds. Think of model tier system is real. So tier system, think about which are the ones you're wanting to use. Sonnet as delivers Opus level performance and is cheaper. So strategically, if you're thinking a procurement strategy, it needs to reflect this. Enterprise buying has matured. Cost, and use case matching now trump raw accuracy in procurement decisions. Think about those. The shift is from efficiency to velocity. So comes from compressing insight into action, not just doing tasks faster. So think about which ones you're using. Trust requires new metrics, reasoning. So we've talked about trust before, and reasoning continuously looking at sort of how it's continuing, and long context retrieval are the new reliability benchmarks. So that means these are the software benchmarks. What we want is the long context retrieval. In other words, the memory retrieves without it getting lost in, that sort of messy middle. The next frontier is orchestration, and that's to come for most of us, of course, of 84% of leaders cite skills gap in multi-agent systems as the primary barrier to start building capability now. So there's much more to come. So that in essence is what we've covered today. And I just want to say thank you. Hope that's been helpful. Hope that's been helpful. And I hope you'll be, please share which are the ones you'll be, working on. In 2 weeks' time, I'll be inviting someone who's actually started creating this behind the scenes to show how they've been building. So we're going to see a case study of how they've started building this, and we'll see an example. Oh, you're welcome, Anita. So I've just touched on a few of those. Test those out, and let me know how you get on. I'm super excited with the new version, Sonnet 4.6 being out, just released yesterday. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I've got a few more seconds if you've got a question or just a comment. Thank you. You're more than welcome. Ivan, thank you. Thank you, Anita. Hiya. I know you're on the road. And David, great seeing you as always. Thank you, Ivan. Speak to you. And Tom, thanks for being here. Sharita, take it easy. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Cheers.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much, Bally.
Hope you
Take
found
care,
that
everyone.
helpful.
I
You too.
did. Oh, I always do.
Amazing. Great. I'm excited to hear. You'll be, sort of top, you'll be thinking about which ones now, right?
Yeah, of course.
Take it easy. Always great
Thank
seeing
you.
you. All right. God
All
bless.
right.
Speak to you soon.
Take
Ciao
care.
now. Ciao now.